Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. In today's episode, Anthony Power and I are going to be following up on more news coming out of the SALT conference or the Wyoming Blockchain Symposium. Some big speeches being made over the last few days, including from the new CEO Matt Schultz of CleanSpark, hinting at a potential strategy shift, along with some comments from the president's son himself. We're going to be talking about all of that in today's presentation. Before we get into it, take a second, smash the like button, guys. Big help to myself and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. And let us know in the comment section below what you make of this apparent strategy shift at CleanSpark and if you're currently holding shares. With that being said, let's get into today's video. All right, guys, away we go. A fun podcast for you today. We decided since Bitcoin and the miners are in the red, we're not even going to show them today. We'll wait for a green one there, but we do have some interesting comments and discussion coming out of the SALT conference. So yesterday we talked about the Wyoming Blockchain Symposium. This looks like an extremely high-end event. We have definitely got to get on the guest list for this one next year, Anthony. We're heading out to New York for the HC Wainwright conference. But this one here, a lot of headline speakers, a lot of big announcements, and that's what we're going to be double clicking on in today's presentation. So we've got Eric Trump and some of the Trump son's comments in store for you, but where we wanted to start is actually with our good friend Matt Schultz and CleanSpark. So he was presenting at the SALT conference. We've got a clip here as well, and this one actually stirred up quite a commotion on social media. So before we get into the clip, Anthony, I wanted to get your overarching thoughts here.
Yeah, this is an interesting stance. I mean, we covered the sort of resignation of Zach in a previous podcast, and to be honest, we didn't see it wholeheartedly coming, that one. I mean, Zach's been running the company now as CEO for a number of years, and to be honest with you, as an operation, and to be honest, from an operating standpoint, they're pretty much up there in the top 3 or 4 miners, and no one's going to doubt that. And we've managed to have the opportunity to meet Zach and Matt at many conferences in the past and get the opportunity to have a discussion with them. And actually, Matt's been on the podcast as well, so we've got to know them a little bit better than maybe some of the other miners and understand what they're trying to do. And it was fairly clear from Matt's discussion, that panel, that they've had a change of thought.
Yeah, they most definitely have. Now, we've seen HPC AI creep into the Bitcoin mining sector extensively over the last probably 18 months. Gradually, we've seen more and more miners kind of succumb to the fact that HPC AI does offer significant margins and the opportunity to monetize these megawatts. We have even seen some of the other companies change their stance. So Riot was a good example of that, coming to the table a little bit later than maybe some of the other players, obviously with their big HPC offering at Corsicana or Rockdale. So before we get much more into the discussion, let's play the clip here from Matt Schultz. This is the SALT conference clip that really did cause quite a commotion or discussion on social media. As again, CleanSpark has really made their stance as the final pure play miner in the sector. So we'll go ahead, we'll listen to Matt, and then we'll get our thoughts there.
Now, to the point about AI, I think the next logical step that you'll see, and that our team, we've got a pretty sophisticated team of AI guys led by Taylor Monig. But I think what you'll see is that some of the infrastructure that we have that makes more sense and gives us a higher ROI per megawatt than Bitcoin mining currently does, we're certainly analyzing those very actively.
So now that we've listened to that perspective, Anthony, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit, because listening to this commentary, as you just said, quite a 180 from what we actually heard in person at the Bitcoin conference in Amsterdam last year.
It is, and let's be honest, I mean, what have they been advocating for the last few years? They are America's Bitcoin miner. I think they've even copyrighted the slogan, so it sticks for that company. And they were, until recently, one of the last 2 companies to go down the route of staying pure play. We've seen Mara now start to pivot. And now we've seen, as Matt has moved into that chair of CEO, also now consider that, if they have sites that are suitable, they'll look at it from a return on investment perspective. And if it drives a better deal, then they'll do it. The issue will be and this is not just about CleanSpark. This is about a number of miners. I mean, if we look how many public miners are out there, there's probably over 30 still, even though we've seen some M&A activity. There's still a considerable amount of miners in the space. And if we're saying now that effectively all of them are pivoting towards HPC, I firmly believe that not all of them will make it in HPC. This is the different beast altogether from Bitcoin mining. And you have to think there's a lot more involved. I mean, Bitcoin mining is effectively you build your basic infrastructure, you buy your machines, and you plug them in, and that's about it, and then you monitor the performance. And you don't need anyone selling the business. It's just an operating business. Once we go into HPC, it's a whole ball game, and you've got to have sales teams, you've got to have staff that are experts in delivering HPC. And as much as the reputation of Taylor Monig in the Bitcoin mining industry, he's not a HPC expert, so they'll have to bring an equivalent of him in just to manage HPC. When you think about it, let's go back and just listen to what Zach said literally 10 months ago.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I think you brought your camcorder to this one, Anthony. You got some footage here, so we'll dig into the archives. This was the keynote presentation from Zach in Amsterdam last year when specifically addressing the AI or HPC opportunity. So we'll listen to this one again, then get our commentary.
You have said some things about AI, but what is your approach at the AI boom? Are you taking advantage of it at all?
What we have said is that we're not pursuing it. But there's a reason. The reason is that, again, strategy over a headline. Mm-hmm. If we're going to do something with AI, it's because we're committed to something. There will be a plan. There will be a customer on the other side. There will be a business. And I think that's the number one thing that is getting overlooked. Mm-hmm. Bitcoin miners have no customers. It's a great business. I love it. Our customers is the algorithm and everyone that uses Bitcoin, but we don't sell anything. We don't have to do any of that. Mm-hmm. There's no administrative part where you have to take customer support calls. When you run a data center, you have all of that. You need a sales team. You need all these pieces. So it should never be underestimated the effort it's going to take to do that.
So this is where it gets interesting. Now, obviously, you guys can see a polar opposite stance here when we listen to Zach saying, yes, we're aware of the opportunity, we're not interested, citing exactly what you just mentioned, Anthony. They don't have the sales capability. It's a different fundamental operating structure. He even goes into talking about the customer service components of this, and obviously the infrastructure or portfolio side of it, which we'll come on to. That's quite stark contrast to what we just heard from Matt Schultz. So the question now is, in terms of Zach's departure, who is in the AI camp, who is in the HPC camp, and ultimately where will CleanSpark go from here? So now that we've set the stage, I'll flip it back to you, Anthony. We've seen some big names on social media, some of the IREN bulls, Franz Baker, our good friend Rex Finance. They've dug into the archives as well and actually found some interesting tweets talking about if CleanSpark were to pivot like this or make a 180, what some investors like Rex, for example, would feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the tweets myself, and Rex obviously is a very much a bull when it comes to CleanSpark. He only generally reports on CleanSpark. He does all these videos on CleanSpark. So if you want information on CleanSpark, I'd recommend people go and listen to Rex's videos, because he does do a deep dive. Let's be honest, he does a lot of work for him, and he might not be getting paid by the company, but he probably should be. On the amount of social media output he puts out there. And, we also see the same from Franz in terms of IREN as well, because he's an IREN bull and he's been doing that for quite a while as well. Maybe not as long as I have, because I've been in the space, since Dan rang me when they IPO'd, which is probably 3.5 years ago, nearly 4 years. So I've probably got a little bit of head start on some of those IREN bulls, but it's great to see people coming into the space, and they do a lot of good work. Franz and Umbaisam and Kama Sutra and many others do a sterling job, and they really dig into deep. And so you can see this little tete-a-tete with regards to the tweets, and now we've seen this turnaround from Matt Schultz, the CEO and the chairman of the company, saying that they will now consider where opportunities lie. That to me looks like a 180 pivot. And Franz is not letting that one lie down with Rex for any moment in time. And he's basically saying, now you're going to have to start selling your CleanSpark shares and doing what you originally said, which was purchase Cypher. Because even Rex suggested, and actually Rex isn't the only one that suggested this, many of the insiders in the industry believe that Cypher are one of the best miners in place to deliver HPC. And this goes back to my point. Not everyone's going to win doing this strategy. It's very costly compared to mining. You're going to have to get capital raised. You're going to have to go through that process of negotiation, and that's not going to take, a week or so, as you see retail investors expecting it to take. It's a conversation over the table, and we'll shake hands at the end of the day with this big, 10 billion deal for the next 12 months. That's not happening at all, and we've got some insights into how long it's actually taking some of the miners to deliver and those that have delivered.
Yeah, we certainly do. And that's where we wanted to start digging in on our own analysis here. So whether or not Ben does sell his CleanSpark and go to Cypher, the fact is that even some of the strongest CleanSpark bulls identified the fact that this is maybe not the best fit for CleanSpark's portfolio. Now, as you say, HPC AI is no easy game to play in, and it's not probable that every single company entering this space will be successful. So in our opinion, or based on our analysis here, we've identified 3 potential concerns for CleanSpark if they do make this transition. So the first one here is going to be the makeup of their sites within the portfolio. The third is going to be the internal bench strength or expertise, similar to what you just talked about with an IREN or a Cypher. And the third point is going to be the timing. So as we've heard from individuals like Patrick Fleury, for example, from TeraWulf, we've got a clip we can play you in a second here. These contracts take 5 or 6 months at best. They're hundreds of pages long. And the fact that we now have 10 or 12 other miners ahead of CleanSpark in line, or essentially they're last out of the gate, could present a challenge as they're going through this contract process. So that's basically what we're going to be focusing on. The first topic here, Anthony, if we pull up the CleanSpark deck, this is 1 quarter outdated. They didn't put a deck out in this most recent quarter. You can see the makeup of their portfolio. Now, they do obviously have a ton of sites. That's great for Bitcoin mining. You've mentioned they're great operators. However, when you start talking about HPC AI, as we just heard, bigger is often better.
In those conversations with hyperscalers, are you coming back with a thought that having large sites puts you in a strong position, or we've seen some miners starting to switch to sort of like more sort of like 50, 60 megawatt niche amounts there, and then growing from that position. What do you see as from their perspective, what they're looking for out there? Is big better effectively?
Yeah, big is still better. I mean, look, there's some people out there saying, hey, they won't look at, they're looking for gigawatt plus sites at a minimum. And, there aren't that many of those right now. So once that can scale and expand to that. But look, we still see a lot of demand for that, sub, that call it 250 to 500 megawatt site.
We have heard some of the miners looking to do smaller deals. And when I say smaller deals, that's like 50, 60 megawatts of compute power, plus maybe another 20, 25 megawatts of ancillary power supporting that there. Now, when you go to the slide presentation from CleanSpark showing their sites, some alarm bells come out straight away. I mean, at Wyoming, they've got 2 sites there, 110 megawatts. That's not really going to cover HPC in terms of size, unless it's very small and they want to do like a tier 3 data center, similar to what Hive or Hive Digital are doing, and then have sales team try to sell time through that sort of facility. That's not really what the big miners are looking to do. Tennessee, 13 sites totaling 234 megawatts. Again, you can do the maths. That's tiny, and again, you're going to have, 10, 12 megawatt HPC sites. That's not going to cut it. Georgia's actually probably slightly different. It's got 12 sites, 508 megawatts. We know the Sandersville site is quite significant, and we've got some photographs to show you in a second about that one there. Mississippi, forget Mississippi, 5 sites totaling 63. They're all tiny sites there. That's, Bitcoin mining. And let's put this in perspective. CleanSpark have done an exceptional job in going out into rural areas and delivering Bitcoin mining into places where it's very welcome. But in honesty, even the Sandersville site there, we'll look at the picture of that there. It's a very basic Bitcoin mining site, compared to some of their peer miners. Let's take a look at the Sandersville site, because we've got a nice photograph of it here.
Yeah, in this deck, they did have a capital stewardship slide that shows Sandersville. You're right, Anthony. Even compared to some of the facilities we've been to, like a Denton or a Corsicana, most definitely, some of these newer sites, it does, I guess, not necessarily compare on the infrastructure quality or caliber of build. Now, that being said, obviously they are able to retrofit, they are able to knock that down. But looking at this image, a couple other things that pop out to me in terms of size of site, not necessarily megawatts, but acreage or footprint of the site, again, lacks in comparison to some of the scale these other miners are able to achieve. You also look at the proximity to infrastructure, water, some of those variables as well, high-speed fiber, latency, redundancy. There's a lot of variables here as we start to look across these other investor decks and these other portfolios that I just don't feel are necessarily in place at this point.
That's a good point, Bryce. And just to add to that, a lot of these other miners have brought in companies to do evaluations of the sites already. So again, this is something that CleanSpark can't have done, because at the end of the day, they're just literally now turning their strategy towards high performance compute, or towards the best strategy to deliver the best return for its investors. We must be clear about that. It needs to be the best return. So if HPC is the best return, that's something to be focusing on. But you're quite right. You need to have a number of supporting services to deliver high performance compute. It's not just like the Bitcoin mining setup we talked about earlier.
No, it's certainly not. And even Zach alluded to the fact you also need a whole new team behind you, not only the IT experts to build the data center, but you need the sales experts to actually fill the GPU space. You need managerial staff. You need customer service support. You need loyalty, retention agents or components of the company. So now if we start to look at some of these other players who've landed successful deals, again, many of these companies, specifically in Core Scientific, have been at the negotiation table for years at this point. But if we look at their portfolio here, whether we're talking about Cypher, Core Scientific, Riot, some of the consistencies I see, Anthony, large scale, they're located to large urban areas, they have access to fiber, water, and of course, huge parcels of land. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of acres, with many of these companies like Cypher, like Riot, actually gobbling up more land.
Yeah, we've been fortunate. We've been to the Denton facility, which is the largest site that CoreWeave have got to develop for that partnership with CoreWeave, and that's 400 megawatts. We've been to that site. It was 150 megawatts Bitcoin mining site when we were there, and during that visit there, it was sort of slipped out that this potentially was going to be the HPC site. And we kept that quiet until the announcement came out, probably 12 months later, that Denton was going to be the flagship HPC site for Core Scientific. But again, looking around at all the other sites, 100 megawatts, 150 megawatts, 200 megawatts. These are big sites. And this supports what Jeff LaBerge was saying from Bitdeer. Big is better. And we see this across the board in a number of the other miners too.
Yeah, we certainly do. You can see some of Cypher's properties up to 500 megawatts. Obviously, Barbara Lake, on the agenda for next year in Black Pearl, but they've got even deeper inventory, which again is maybe one of the reasons Ben indicated he would buy Cypher over CleanSpark. Now, you mentioned some of these feasibility studies. We've seen that done. Altman Salone with Riot. We just saw an impressive one out of Bitfarms as well. Again, you can see their locations, hundreds of megawatts in Pennsylvania, 170 here in Canada, Quebec. The other visual, they say a picture says 1,000 words, I wanted to bring up. If you look at the Rockdale site, you keenly identified, Anthony, in the bottom left, you can see some groundworks being prepared there, or diggers, excavators on site. You can also see the scale, you can see the water, you can see the type of buildings. If I look at this image, again, this is Rockdale, so not even Riot's flagship facility, Corsicana. This is essentially their second HPC potential offering. They don't have a client yet, so they've already started all this feasibility and have still yet to sign one. If I take that into consideration, I look at this image next to Sandersville, it's difficult to see the correlation there.
They're chalk and cheese. The Rockdale facility is the largest mining site in the world currently with full power. Corsicana has the ability to get to 1 gigawatt, but it's only got 400 megawatts energized at the moment. So they still haven't switched the power on for the remaining 600 megawatts, and they'll be doing that as they sign up a deal for that one there. But the Rockdale facility has 700 megawatts already. And you can see from that photograph there is no doubt whatsoever that Riot are preparing this for the next 2 years to go into HPC. They know as well as I know that the Bitcoin mining has probably got another couple of years left to run, and they're getting all their ducks in a row to sort of like move into this new industry, which has got longevity, not reliant on any volatility of a Bitcoin price. People go back 30 years ago with the World Wide Web. Will it ever catch on? Well, it did catch on, and AI, from what we've seen already, is the future. We're using it in our everyday life at the moment, probably very, very small amounts, but the ability for that to grow will mean that we'll need more of these sites. So it's clear as day that Riot are, they'll be progressing the Rockdale facility. That'll be included in the conversations there. It's not even operating at optimum power in terms of mining at the moment there, so they're not utilizing all the power because they're only delivering a smaller amount of Bitcoin mining than they are at the Corsicana site. So they could probably start even refurbing some of those buildings very, very quickly. But look at the water there, look at the size of the space. There's plenty of space all around that site there to grow out. And one thing about Riot is, even at Corsicana site, that's an enormous site. They've just gone and bought a massive parcel of land next to it, so they have that ability to cover the additional requirement when you do implement HPC. This is not putting a building up on a field and shoving some miners into it. There's a lot more involved, a lot more requirements, and it has to meet all those conditions to run a good service.
Yeah, it certainly does. And again, we're by no means saying CleanSpark can't get there. We're just saying at this point in time, definitely some hurdles ahead of them. Now, in terms of the staffing side of things, we've also seen a number of key appointments, announcements, both internal executives being hired, directors, board members, consultants, third-party firms like Tier 5 or T5 data centers. So all of that, again, not saying Matt and team are unable to do it, but we've heard there's a long lead time. These are very limited or exclusive skill sets that these people have, and they're in very high demand. So it's going to be difficult from a timing perspective. Patrick Fleury actually made that specifically clear in his discussion at the SALT conference as well. Again, a great one to be at if we could ever get there. Talking about the Fluid Stack and Google contract they just announced, saying if the stars align, things go perfectly, you're talking 4 or 5 months. And TeraWulf, again, already had their foot in the door with some of this HPC activity with the Wulf Den, or that trial data center they had set up.
Yeah, and we've seen other CEOs suggest that even 5 months is very, very optimistic. Should be even longer for these discussions. We're talking about leases, we're talking about contracts, we're talking about terms in terms of length of contracts with options to increase that. These will be thousands and thousands of page documents, and all about, a payment mechanism, how to deliver a service. If you don't deliver as to the document like that, who pays who? So there's so much involved. This is not like a 2-day sat around the table. And if you're going to these discussions with a hyperscaler, you want to make sure you've got the best team around you. This is not the CEO and the CFO only around the table. This will be a team of 25, 30 people, experts in all those areas. So if one question is asked, the CEO will point to the person responsible for that area and say, respond to that there as my expert, in that particular area there. So all the experiences around the table there, led by the CEO of the company, and that's what would probably happen. I've been involved in the UK in some of these big meetings with big builders, and you want to make sure you've got the best team available, and it does work. And I spoke to Adam Sullivan about this, and he said, yeah, the meetings they went to, 25 to 30 people from Core Scientific attending those meetings, including the people that were going to build the infrastructure. And, we've already seen Ben Gagnon last week say exactly the same thing. They just signed up with T5 data centers, and they'll be going to the meetings because they've built some of the biggest data centers in North America. And when you've got a reputable company sat on the table next to you, it means there's less questions to ask. Your reputation already precedes you, and that's more like a box ticking exercise. CleanSpark are going to have to gather a lot of this now and see what's available, and also have a long look at what they've got in terms of sites and how much they could actually turn into HPC. They've got a lot of power, over 1 gigawatt. That slide is slightly out of date there. They've announced since then that they've over 1 gigawatt in their July update. But we can clearly see when you've got 34, 35 sites, the majority operating at 10 or 12 megawatts, that's not going to be utilized for these big co-location deals that, the likes of TeraWulf, the likes of Core Scientific, the likes of Galaxy, Applied Digital have already landed. And the expectation is we'll see Riot, Cypher, IREN, Bitfarms land similar deals as we go through the remainder of the year.
Yeah, time will tell, as we like to say here, Anthony. And again, we're looking forward to seeing the next official presentation or discussion with Matt Schultz to look at how CleanSpark is going to position themselves. The trouble for me, again, as an investor in this company, whether I think about fleet efficiency, fleet size, HPC, I just don't see where CleanSpark is truly excelling or number one in the sector right now. But again, not to be said that things can't change. Now, I did want to quickly play that clip from the CFO of TeraWulf, Patrick Fleury. Patrick's been on the channel. We think very highly of him, but a great way to end this segment and hear exactly what we just said about the difficulty, the specifics, and the time length of these contract negotiations.
Like, electrical infrastructure doesn't move quickly. Tech is used to moving quickly and breaking things, but these deals take an extremely long time to come together. It took us, from soup to nuts with Google and FluidStack, 4 to 5 months of very intense due diligence, and then, getting I would break these deals down into 2 aspects. One is you have to sign a lease, and the lease is very complicated in and of itself. And then as soon as the lease is signed, the team turns to me and Solomon and the rest of us up here and says, how do we finance this?
So now that we've heard from TeraWulf, a few other notable speakers or statements at the conference, again, taking place in Wyoming, Eric Trump, the president's son himself. This is really interesting how involved this family is becoming in the cryptocurrency world. Eric Trump taking to the stage on multiple occasions, number one, stating that countries are now accumulating Bitcoin, going on record saying he's aware of one that's quietly been accumulating 200,000 Bitcoin. Then following that up with a statement that Bitcoin, in his opinion, there will be no question in hitting $1 million per coin.
Yeah, I mean, crazy. 200,000 Bitcoin worth 22 billion. And they didn't tell anybody. They've just been quietly accumulating it. So that'll be interesting. He obviously knows who it is. I'm assuming you'll have people out there trying to find the wallet now with that amount in there, because there will be mechanisms to find those large wallets. But that's again, it just adds to the positive news stories we've seen on Bitcoin. When we've shown the HODL 15 update of the 100 companies, those 100 companies on there are very close to 1 million Bitcoin in total now. Literally, probably the next update will be over 1 million if the way that these companies are growing in terms of Bitcoin buying. Probably 25, 30 of those companies literally every week are buying more Bitcoin or mining more Bitcoin in the case of the mining companies. So that's just continued growth. We're not selling any of ours, Bryce. So, who is selling? Maybe a couple of those people who bought in at when it was $1 a Bitcoin, maybe taking some profit off the table. But most of us aren't selling. And actually, most people who own Bitcoin now are pretty much in profit because it's, so close to the all-time high. Hasn't been much time to buy Bitcoin and make it effectively a loss on it at the moment. So, but that's a great update from Eric Trump there, the president's son. I'll be keenly trying to find out who that country is, because we know there are some countries out there, but that's a large scale purchase there, 22 billion. That's significant.
Wouldn't it be ironic if that was the United States and he covertly exposed them like that? Yeah, you're right. And if you look at the Trump Media Organization, they're in the top 10 holders on that table, 15,000 Bitcoin. So if you multiply that out by Eric Trump's $1 million prediction, by my math, that would essentially eclipse all of the Trump family wealth, whether you're talking real estate, gold, silver, investments, equities, bonds. It appears they've gone all in on crypto. And as I've said many times, I'm happy to ride those coattails. So with that being said, it is Thursday. That means the newsletter's out tomorrow. Always free, you guys, a weekly newsletter, some great insights in there. While you're on the website, take a look at Miner Madness 4.0 leaderboard. Kama Sutra, we mentioned earlier in the presentation, ranking very favorably in that competition, but shout out to all of the people on the top 10 or 15 leaderboard there. With that being said, we'll be back here tomorrow. Another great podcast for you. Let us know in the comment section below. Do you think CleanSpark will pivot into HPC AI? And do you think this is the right move for that company? We'll talk to you soon.